Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Justin Turner, a candidate for District 4 City Council. I'm here with baby Chuck. He was just born today, quite interesting fashion. A big shout out to St. George Fire Department for helping us get him out from underneath the shed. It's quite an exciting day for that. And so, kind of with that, I'll turn things over to Maurice to kind of explain what the instructions are, and then we'll get started.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the Justin Turner podcast. The way we run this is Justin speaks for a few minutes on a particular topic or a series of topics, and he does that for about 8-10 minutes. Then we switch over into Q&A, where everybody can send in questions through the Zoom module. So click on Q&A and then ask your questions, and we'll feed them over to Justin. And then after that, we'll open up the microphones. Sometimes those in attendance want to talk to them. Sometimes they don't, which is fine. So whether it happens or not, we'll go ahead and open up and offer to open up the mic. And then whether we have a discussion with folks or not, Justin will bring us to closing at the end with any closing statements and anything that he wants to wrap up. All right, without much delay, let's go ahead and get started. Justin, good to have you here. You have the floor.
Okay. Yeah, so kind of get started. I'll explain a little bit of what happened. We've got Ellie, the puppy, is a pregnant foster dog here with us. She uses the doggy door, and she decided sometime in the middle of the night that she was going to go out and have her puppies underneath the shed. So we tried our best to try to fish them out as much as possible. We ended up having to get the fire department out here to to help us get them out, and we got all four of them out. They were all four boys, and it was great to great to have their assistance in um, getting them out. So kind of the discussion of what I wanted to talk about tonight isn't related to the school districts, and I'm sure everybody's seen the press conference today by Rick Edmonds that was announcing the bill that's going to create the pathway to the creation of the St. George School District. And by all accounts, that was the main justification for the creation of the school district. And it was a quite interesting press conference, and kind of some of the things that they spoke on were almost I kind of identical on the mindset that I've had from the get go on school districts, and kind of what I believe is we need a model that's very similar to how the state of Utah creates their school districts, and the state of Utah is the second rate highest rated school system in the country by state, and they also spend significantly less money than the state of Louisiana. They spend about $10,000 per student, to where we're spending about 14,000 per student for our K through 12 education. And when I first started looking at school districts, I started looking into that model in particular, and what was coming out of it is they have a school choice system, so it's not necessarily designated by district, that parents have the option of placing their students in schools depending upon what their personal preference is. And they also utilize a lot of charter schools. So, and to explain what a charter school is, it's a school system, essentially. It's a business that has their own curriculum, that they come in and they operate their schools based upon what they have from a proven success level. And and kind of with that, that's the mindset and the idea that I think is a successful model, and it's proven to be successful. And in addition to that, I in the creation of a St. George school district, I believe we do need to work with Baton Rouge and East Baton Rouge Parish on how this transition is going to be, because there's a lot of concerns and things like that, as far as parents that may have students that go to magnet schools in East Baton Rouge Parish, and we also don't want to just create this massive educational void in Baton Rouge Parish, and because that becomes a breeding ground for criminal activities. When you reduce the education of in any type of society, that then crime increases, and this is something that we don't necessarily want to have. And it was actually refreshing to see whether it was their own particular mindsets from the get go, or whether it was something that I spoke and I said that maybe it ignited and gave this information. So it's kind of an honor. I feel like I haven't heard some of those things before spoken, but to hear it at the press conference is good to hear that we at least have the mindset and the groundwork on achieving a system that's both beneficial for St. George and Baton Rouge. And I think that we can potentially come together and do this. Now, to kind of speak on the creation of a school district, it's going to be a very difficult process to get there, and something that is going to depend upon kind of how everything is constructed and set up. So one of the kind of the topics that Rick Ekman was talking about is they're they're prepared to present the bill. However, they can't present the bill, and it won't be any kind of public information until it actually makes it onto the floor during the next legislative cycle. So we won't really get a whole lot of specific details on it until that bill is actually there. But kind of my hope is that they are actually working with the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board. There's negotiations and things like that, kind of in the background, in hopes that we can get this done and we can get it done correctly, and we can have essentially a unified decision that'll in turn benefit when it comes to the election cycle. And so right now, the introduction of the bill is the first step. So there has to be a constitutional amendment in order for the creation of the school district, which means it has to go through a few cycles within the legislature to actually get it put on the ballot. And then once it's placed on the ballot, it has to go to a statewide vote. So the entire state of Louisiana has to vote for that constitutional amendment and vote in favor of it. In addition to, it has to be voted in favor on by the city of St. George as well as East Baton Rouge Parish. And depending on how that specific bill is actually structured is going to make the decision on what's difficult about that. And the East Baton Rouge Parish aspect of it is going to be very difficult. Part of that reason is, I think, a large percentage of St. George residents actually attend private schools in this area, and that's partially because the school systems and things like that in Baton Rouge they're flawed. And so these private schools are going to have a vested interest in stopping this. If we improve the public education, they're going to come at it at full force. And if we don't do things properly with making sure that there is a unified agreement with East Baton Rouge Parish on how this transition is going to work, they're going to also be putting a massive front against it. And it's just one of those situations where if you think about the fact of how much opposition was given against St. George over 30, 40, $50 million worth of tax revenue, the creation of a St. George school district is going to encompass $100+ million worth of educational money. So you can kind of have the mindset and the thought process of, if they fought that hard for 30, $40 million, how much more are they going to fight over 100+ million when it, and as I said, it just kind of, it's going to depend upon what that negotiation looks like. And like I said, I'm kind of hopeful based on kind of what I heard in that press conference that at the very least those topics are being discussed now. And because, just to be honest, outside of myself, this is the first time that I've heard it mentioned on working with East Baton Rouge Parish and school board systems on the creation of this. So, kind of with that, that's kind of, everything I have to say on that. So if you like, we can go up to Q&A. So if we've got any questions that we have available right now.
Yeah, a question that we have is the timing of it. Anything significant about the timing of the announcement or the press conference?
So I think the timing was probably a politically motivated announcement. I don't think it was a coincidence that the two interim officials, Dustin Yates and Patty Cook, were both invited to speak at it, and I think it may have been a political move. They could have very easily waited a week or two until after the election to do it. But at the end of the day, it is an exciting exciting thing, and it's the accomplishment of a goal of what the ultimate decision was. So would I've rather probably see it a little bit later? Yeah, maybe so, but it, I don't make those decisions, and I can't necessarily say I fault them for doing it when they did.
Yeah, and good. And what are you seeing as the another question is what are you seeing as the major obstacles, or do you also see any chance that it may not come to fruition?
The the election, the public election, is going to be the biggest obstacle. For one, the statewide election it's something that's going to be a pretty costly thing to be able to go out there and essentially campaign for the state of Louisiana as a whole to vote in favor for the constitutional amendment change. In addition, the fact that the East Baton Rouge Parish as a whole has to vote for it as well. And those two things are difficult because, as I said, there's individual companies or whatever they are. These private school districts are going to have a massive vested interest in fighting opposition on this. They can make whatever claims they want, and if we don't necessarily do it right the first time, it's going to be another major hurdle to get this done. And this is at least the first step is getting this bill introduced and being able to get it to pass through state legislation. And that in itself is kind of a difficult task, because in order for there to be a constitutional amendment placed on a ballot, there has to be a 2/3 vote in favor in state legislation. So it's not necessarily a foregone conclusion, but it is at least a step in the right direction.
All right, and other than another question is that we received is other than being a candidate who's interested in it, what is your personal or your vested interest in the district, in the school district happening?
So I have two children that go to Basis. It's a public charter school. So I have a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old. They're kindergarten and fourth grade, and Basis is an excellent school. I have no issues with Basis, but it is also a very difficult school. It's a college preparatory school, and it was a situation to where when me and my wife were first discussing, she was in favor of sending our children to Bethany, and we kind of took the tour of Bethany, and then we took the tour of Basis, and the discussion was like I really feel like Basis is the best opportunity, and the best path forward is also I already paid for it with my tax money, so I didn't necessarily like the idea of if I'm going to pay for a lesser education. And fortunately enough, when we ended up taking the tour Basis, and my wife agreed that this was the best opportunity for our son, and he's done very well every since kindergarten and moved on. Is It's definitely gotten much more difficult as he's moved up in grades, but he's always done above average in his grade performance. Well, when my daughter, she first started kindergarten this year, she's just a different person. Her mind doesn't necessarily work in the same capacity, and she's struggling a lot more than what Gabe ever did. And part of that is the curriculum is it's an accelerated educational program. It's a very difficult thing. Like there's things that my daughter is learning in kindergarten that I didn't learn in elementary school until second, third grade sometimes. So based on that, it's going to be kind of evident that my daughter is probably not going to be able to sustain the Basis education, and that's where the benefit of a school choice system comes in play, because it's the understanding and it's the mindset that not everybody learns the same way. Not everybody is going to excel in the same things. And if if we teach everybody the exact same way, we're going to have people that fail and we're going to have people that exceed. And it doesn't make the people that don't succeed failures. It just means that we're not teaching them properly. So if we do have a school choice system, then we could potentially, identify a school system, a school program that would be more fitting for the way my daughter likes, is able to learn, or maybe and more focused in the areas of education that she's going to excel at. And like I said, understanding I have two children. They're completely different, and them going to the same exact school doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing for both of them.
Yeah, good, good. All right. And then uh what model do you find Zachary has his own model, Central has? Have you looked into any of those, or have you studied any that you would prefer?
The only model that I've studied is more so, like I said, in Utah. Um, I think I can't remember exactly which one, but I think I think Zachary is the one that has a charter school model, or it may be St. Francisville. I can't remember exactly which one, but I know there's one city that has a charter school model, and I to kind of be of cautious that we have Central, Zachary, and Baker, I believe, or the three cities within Baton Rouge, and they're not all successful. Central and Zachary have been successful with the creation of the school district, but from the articles that I've seen for Baker, their school district is actually, I think there's a couple of schools that are about to be taken over because of the poor educational format. So the mindset that the creation of a school district and a localized school district just automatically creates this far superior educational system is still going to come down to the individuals that are running it and controlling it, and what the model is. And like I said, I don't necessarily know exactly what's best and what's working for Central and Zachary. And my focus has been based on kind of the city, well, not the city, but the state of Utah, and what their model is, and that's utilizing more charter schools. And they're actually taking an approach as far as dual immersion uh, language courses. So as opposed to English being the predominantly language spoken, they actually have multiple languages to where they're being immersed in dual languages. And one of the things that they found is students that participate in that have a higher reading proficiency than any other students. So
Good, good. All right, we don't have any other questions. Let's go ahead and go to the phones. Let's ask folks if they want to. Let's give everybody about a 5-second pause. Invite everybody to participate, ask questions, open mic. Click on your Zoom option that says actions or more, and then click on raise your hand, and we'll give you the mic. Or inside of the Q&A section, go ahead and indicate you want the mic. We'll give you access.
yeah.
All right, well, good. All right, Justin, bring us to a close. Give us any additional thoughts, or cover anything else you want to cover, or wrap up anything you did earlier.
Okay. Yeah. I appreciate the time. I appreciate the taking the opportunity to let me to speak on you. And I'm not a I'm not an expert in every matter, but I can tell you that I do my research on everything, and I'm I'm still kind of new to getting into the school side of it. And I plan to do a little bit more research and things like that to be more proficient on what my understanding is. And like I said, kind of right now, my focus is in what the state of Utah is doing, and reading some of the articles and the research that they've done there, because their numbers are, they speak for themselves. They spend less money, and then they get better results. So kind of with that, I appreciate everybody spending it, taking the time with me, and we'll see y'all again tomorrow night, 8:30.
Good deal. Good night. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.